Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Across the Pond with Adam and Andy. Super excited to chat with you guys today about e-commerce recruiting for new graduates. I think this is a really important topic. There are a lot of new grads right now looking for jobs in e-commerce, looking to start their career. And it's a tough job market right now with everything that's been going on with COVID and companies that have been putting a pause on hiring. They've been putting a pause on internships. So how does a new graduate land a career in e-commerce? Why should they even want to get into e-commerce? We're going to explore all of these different topics on the call today. And again, Adam Rose from e-commerce placement here in the US. We have Andy Davis from Vertical Advantage and Nurture Talent in the UK. And excited to be here to talk to you about this. So Andy, let's kick it off. Why should a new graduate even want to get into e-commerce? Why is this an area you think that would be good for them to even consider? There's a lot of options out there, right? You can get into a lot of different fields. If you have a marketing degree, you can apply that to a lot of different industries. Why e-commerce specifically, for example?
Yeah, well, I suppose that point is more pertinent than ever, given the kind of the current world we live in, and I guess we're more exposed to some of that, the data and figures around that than other people might be. But actually, most people will be seeing, the rise in online sales, the rise in e-commerce generally recently. So right now, that's obviously a highly relevant point. But I think, regardless of the last couple of months, the point still stands that it's a high growth area and it's only going in one direction. So I think if you're thinking in any way about how you future-proof yourself, give yourself options, and make yourself more kind of eminently employable throughout your career, then getting that experience seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it just, we touched upon this in some of our other videos too. It's just fun. It's a fun industry to be in. There are a lot of different opportunities within e-commerce that you can get involved in, a lot of different areas of the business that you can apply your skill set. You're working with some interesting products. You have a lot of consumer data to work with that's really interesting, and you can see the ROI of what you're doing. And e-commerce in general, the culture, Andy, I mean, as an e-commerce recruiter, you probably see this too, is that people are genuinely really nice in e-commerce. They are incredibly smart. And it's not as stuffy as other corporate cultures. If we're talking about, I don't know, finance, or even the corporate side of healthcare, or really any other corporate function out there or industry, e-commerce has a really cool, progressive, digital focus. It's the forefront of the retail revolution, right? So everybody's super excited about this. And I think it's just a really exciting time to be in e-commerce, and I think it's a lot of fun also.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, even within a company, the type of people you'll find in an e-commerce team within a corporate that might have huge functions in other areas, and typically, we do a lot of CPG, so you've got a lot of people still dealing with traditional retail focused roles. I would say the culture and mentality of the e-commerce team is, can be quite different, and that kind of, it's just like that curiosity, thirst to learn, definitely a kind of willingness to acknowledge what you don't know, and that it's changing all the time, and there are always new problems to solve. There are always new algorithms to get your head around and try and get by, and like that.
New technologies.
Yeah, the kind of solution side of it is just to kind of never ending. And certainly the people I've seen who've done it and progressed, that on the whole kind of share those traits, and are the sorts of kind of curious people who found their way there because of that like problem solving and ever evolving nature.
Yeah, and the progression point I think is really interesting too, because there is a lot of opportunity for growth, for career growth in e-commerce. No matter where you're starting on the team, there's opportunity there for you to grow in your skill set, to advance in your career in a lot of different directions too. So if you're somebody that's a go-getter that wants to take on more responsibility, that's there for you, and no matter what e-commerce role you're taking. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So going from there, then, if you've decided, we've convinced you that e-commerce is a place you need to be, what are the next steps then for someone who's thinking, right, I know generally I'm interested, but what comes next?
Yeah, so having a general idea is good, but I also think you want to get a bit specific in how you want to target your search. And in order to do that, you have to understand the entire e-commerce ecosystem. So there's two parts to that. One is understanding the types of companies that are involved in e-commerce. And you have your typical brands and retailers that everybody thinks about when they're talking about e-commerce. You have Amazon that everybody, of course, thinks about when we talk about e-commerce and other marketplaces. But not a lot of people think about the vendor side as well. So you have e-commerce software as a service companies. Maybe they have a digital marketing software or a web analytics software or an e-commerce platform that they're selling into online retailers. This is a really good high growth field to get into. These roles are typically, there's a lot of marketing positions here. There's a lot of account management, customer success, sales, business development. It's a really interesting area to get involved. Content writing, content marketing as well is huge for these companies. And then you have digital agencies too. So you have your digital agencies that are focused purely on e-commerce and growing online sales for brands and retailers that are their clients in their portfolio. And then you have digital agencies that are more focused, that may be strictly focused on digital marketing for their clients. And that's across their own direct-to-consumer websites and their marketplace businesses. So take a look at all of the different areas that you can be in e-commerce, not just the brands directly. And then you have to think about all the different roles that are in e-commerce, which is a lot. So you have digital marketing across all channels. And usually you have the option of being a digital marketing generalist or a digital marketing specialist. And specialist roles could be purely focused on email, or they could be focused on affiliate marketing or SEM or SEO, or a combination of one or two of those. So explore those different areas. And then we have, merchandising, operations, fulfillment, supply chain, creative, user experience, customer journey, site optimization and web analytics, technology roles. There's a very wide spectrum of positions in e-commerce that you can consider. So my advice is do your research first, have a good sense of the types of companies that you may want to target, and the roles that you want to target as well. And then once you do that, you can tailor your resume accordingly. You can tailor your interview approach accordingly, and I think you'll be quite successful in that regard.
Yeah, I would agree, and I'd say getting an idea of that is really important to begin with, and understanding as much as you can about the ecosystem. And if it so happens that then once you know about that, there's a particular kind of skill set that within an e-commerce function or business that you definitely know you want to pursue, then great, kind of be single-minded about what that is if you're definite. But on the whole, my advice would be, don't close yourself off to anything.
Yeah,
and the more you
right.
learn about that, actually, if at some point in your career you do a stint in a role which is focused on supply chain and logistics from an e-commerce perspective, and you get a wealth of knowledge there, but you end up being in a more commercial or digital marketing role or a trading role at some point, it's not gonna harm you in any way. So
No.
Being a lot of the time, I would say to people, if they're very narrowly focused, do you really need to be that specific this early on? Fair enough if you do, and that's kind of really important to you. But on the whole, I think that my advice would be don't actually, explore the right companies and the right places to work, and kind of get whatever experience you can in the first few years of your career.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I don't want to make it seem like that's what I was thinking, that you should be more specific in that.
I wasn't telling you were wrong.
No. But your point is correct that, I mentioned this because I want everybody to understand the different types of opportunities that are out there and not limit yourself, right? And you're absolutely correct. And e-commerce is an interesting area where you can shift functional areas quite easily. I would say more so than other industries. Because if you have that background in supply chain and logistics, that's a really good foundation for a lot of positions in e-commerce, for example. And you find that across the board. You find a lot of e-commerce teams that like to train their employees very cross-functionally because they're working with very cross-functional teams. So you have to have a solid background and understanding of what everybody's doing, all the pieces of the puzzle that come together in order to make it successful. That's just another reason why e-commerce, I think, is so interesting. So you're right. Don't limit yourself, but I think understanding what's out there is important so that you can really target your job search approach, not just your career, because it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do right now, and really just getting in the door at this point. My hat is off to you because I think you're going to be very successful no matter what you do. But yeah, don't limit yourself for sure.
And any ways you would recommend for people to get that information to understand, what sorts of businesses are out there? Where do you begin with that?
Yeah. So here's a great way to do it. Go on LinkedIn, search for e-commerce, and look at people's profiles. I think that's a great way to do it because you can see how these people got into e-commerce, what their first roles were, how their positions have evolved, the type of companies that they're working at. You can look at their specific skill set and think about what you might need to do in order to get a skill set similar to what they have, if it seems like they might be something that you aspire to be at some point in your career. So I think there is a treasure trove of information on LinkedIn for you to take a look at and see what people are doing in e-commerce, their function, what their job entails. And that's one way to go about it. Or we could reach out to folks like you and I in e-commerce recruiting. And we're happy to have the conversation with you and take a look at your resume and give you some ideas of areas that you might be interested in and areas that you might want to target, maybe areas that you haven't thought about before. I think those are some good ways to go about it.
Yeah, agreed. The other thing I would say there, and we'll probably come on to some of this in another point we're going to talk about potentially, but good kind of sources for information would be actually some of those service providers that you'd mentioned earlier who produce a lot of content from a marketing perspective around the industry generally. Like I was doing a quick search before this just to kind of what are the ones that I would think of. And, someone like a Profitero comes up a lot with, at the minute, they're doing some really good webinars on e-commerce generally, but content on, I found an article about the digital shelf, which I think I'll share after this, which if you've trying to get into e-commerce and you kind of want to start familiarizing yourself with terms like that, those kind of businesses are great for providing kind of white papers and different content.
Yeah, they do great content marketing. They're putting out great content. I agree. That's awesome to take a look at, and that will give you a better understanding of the e-commerce industry, what folks are doing, what's hot right now. And these are great topics too, not just for your job search and targeting the roles that you'd be interested in, but also for interviewing. You're going to have a wealth of information to be able to talk about. And hiring managers are going to love that you come in with this knowledge already. As a new graduate, there's not many people that have a very deep understanding of e-commerce. And if you're taking advantage of that free content that Andy just mentioned, you're going to have a leg up on everybody else. And right now is a really interesting time because a lot of webinars, there's a lot of webinars out there. There's a lot of virtual conferences that they've made free because they can't do it in person right now. Sign up for these, and I think you'll learn a lot.
Yeah. There's probably more, like you said, there's probably more around there ever has been. Certainly, like I've been on webinars recently where I'm learning stuff and kind of seeing people talk that I would never normally potentially get to see.
That's right.
So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff around for sure.
Good. Now let's talk about the actual job search process, resume tips, specifically for new grads. We talked last week about experienced e-commerce professionals and how they should align themselves. I think new graduates are different, right? Because they don't have that much experience to put on their resume. They don't have that much that they can actually speak to themselves during the interview process, unless you're taking advantage of those content resources like we just mentioned. But what are some good ways to position yourself that sets you apart? There's a lot of competition as a new graduate. There are a lot of people graduating at the same time, looking for jobs at the same time that you are, and there's not, I think, as many positions in e-commerce specifically for everybody. How do you set yourself apart?
So what I'm not going to do here is steal your thunder and make some of the points that you recently made on LinkedIn, which were very, very good. So I'll try and not say them and leave them to you. We'll come to them in a minute. But I think, so we don't do loads and loads of graduate recruitment. And actually, to be totally honest, now, if we do in our business, I tend to focus on more senior stuff, and someone else in the team would look at it. But I have in the past recruited, for graduate roles and within e-commerce. And I guess firstly, unless I'm expressly told by the client to look at their degree, I'm not going to look at their degree. So sorry if you're graduating and kind of you've spent 3 years focusing on that, but
it's amazing how you get to this point and you think your degree is what's going to set you apart from other candidates, but it's not. I mean, everybody really has a degree at this point, or if you don't, it's not as important as it used to be. So yes, I agree. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So yeah, I would, I'll pause. I'm not going to pour scorn on it, but I'm all of those years and all of that debt you've got yourself into, I'm now going to tell you that it's not really that relevant. But I guess people probably increasingly are aware of that anyway. And if they're not, maybe should be. I would say, yeah, the reason for that is because it comes down to, any kind of relevant, tangible experience you can draw upon at all that you can tie into whatever it is that you're looking for. So great if you've done a placement year and your degree had a year in industry within it and that was related to e-commerce or digital, like clearly that puts you in a great position. But if you're at a point now where you don't have that and you've only just decided that that's what you want to get into, it's training courses, content. Although training courses I'll come back to, because actually on the whole I would say not a huge amount of those are relevant. So you can also waste a lot of money doing that kind of stuff, but there are some that are good. Content, you can consume, any kind of events or anything you can go to. It's worth mentioning on your CV. I went to Ecom Live or My Digital Shelf or the IGD. These are all ones in the UK where I think they're specific. Anything like that, but also anything probably entrepreneurial that you can kind of lend a hand to that'll give you this experience. And I will now pass over to you to make some of the great points you recently made on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so agree with all of that completely, 100%. And yes, so we do some new graduate recruiting. So I do take a look at a lot of resumes that come in from new graduates. And the biggest thing I see is that they try to fill their resume up with things that are not so relevant, just to have enough on their resume that it looks like they've actually done some work. But I'm going to be very honest with you that employers are not going to care if you were a waiter or a nanny or you were doing any type of job like this outside of e-commerce, because it's not relevant. You're going to be competing against people that have had internships in e-commerce. That is much more relevant than a typical summer job or a job that you're going through during college. I think it's amazing that you're working through college and you're making money and maybe you're paying yourself for college. That is incredible. But what employers are going to want to see is relevant experience, that you're not just a new graduate looking for any job. You're a new graduate looking for a job in e-commerce. And that's a big difference. So not everybody, like Andy mentioned, had the opportunity to take on an internship during school, and that's okay. And even just opportunities in general for e-commerce internships, I think, are quite rare. So that's totally okay. But here's what I would do. I would take any non-relevant work experience off of your resume and add things that we just talked about. So add all of the experience that you've learned from taking these courses online. Google Analytics, Google AdWords, advanced Microsoft Excel courses. These are all things that you're going to be using in an e-commerce position that you can learn and get certified for free online. We'll provide resources to that after the video here so you can take a look. But this is the information age. You have tons of resources at your fingertips. And don't think because you graduated with this amazing degree, and kudos to you because that is awesome, that your learning is going to stop there, because it's not. And you're going to be competing against a lot of people in a similar position as you, and you want to be able to stand out. And the way to do that is to continue learning, continue taking all these courses that you can put on your resume, that you can speak about during the interview, and that's going to put you in a really nice position. The other thing to do is to start an online shop, and you can do that as a drop shipping shop. You can do that fairly easily across Shopify, across Etsy, and you don't even have to start a successful online shop. Just start an online shop. And the reason for this is it's a learning experience, just like everything else. So when you do that, you're going to learn a ton about online retail. You're going to learn a ton about digital marketing for online retail. You're going to learn a ton about technology. You're going to learn a ton about user experience and fulfillment and customer service, the entire 360 view of e-commerce. Now, put that on your resume. It's going to look amazing that you've done this, that you've had this experience, that you kind of get what these online retailers or e-commerce companies are doing, and you're going to be able to talk about that during your interview too. So again, you don't need to know specifically what you want to do in e-commerce for your first role, but have that e-commerce experience on your resume. It's going to look amazing. It's going to set you apart from other candidates out there, and hiring managers and recruiters are going to love it.
Yeah, that's the stuff that I was talking about. I think that's as good as advice as you could give, pretty much. And I would say, when again coming back to what I've looked for when I've recruited for these sorts of roles in the past, and the clients would say the same thing to me. It's any evidence of any exposure to e-commerce at all, and regardless of, like you said, you might have even graduated and worked somewhere else for a year and done a job, in recruitment. There's a lot of people who start in recruitment and then go elsewhere or something else. But what you should focus on in the CV is any of that. And certainly, whenever I see a really junior candidate who said, "Oh, actually, I've sold on Amazon," and it's increasingly common. "Oh, I set up whilst I was at uni. I imported some stuff from China and built a little web shop," and just like, you just that
it's amazing
is the best thing. Yeah, and you immediately think, great, it's not going to be hard for you to find a job. So
yeah, agree. And Andy, the other thing I want to talk about is the importance of soft skills when you're interviewing. This is crucial. It doesn't matter how good your degree is, what you got your degree in, what your GPA was. If you don't come across in the interview as somebody they think would be a good culture fit on the team, somebody that they feel, if they don't think your personality would mesh well on the team, it's not going to matter. This is very, very important. And we talked in previous videos about e-commerce being so cross-functional. You're going to be working with so many people. It's so team-oriented that communication skills, soft skills, personality, culture fit is extremely important. So you have to think about this and really nail it down. You want to make sure that your true self comes across during the interview, and you're going to want to portray yourself as somebody that really can work well with others and is open to criticism and constant learning. I think these are key in e-commerce, and it's tough. I remember when I just graduated from college, and actually I went straight through for my master's degree. So I was pretty young after completing my master's degree. And I remember interviewing, and I felt like I knew everything. I felt way overconfident. I was cocky. And looking back on it, I cannot imagine what these interviewers were thinking about me, because I had no right to be that cocky. I did not know everything. Nobody knows everything at that age. Even now, I'm an old man at this point, right? I don't know everything, and you can't act like you do. So check that for sure. You're going to be learning constantly in e-commerce, but again, that's what I think makes this such a fun industry.
Yeah, yeah, I would echo that. And I mean, I certainly spent a lot of time thinking the people who didn't employ me were in the wrong after I graduated. So I can also agree with that. As I kind of alluded to at the top of the call, my experience from it has been from recruiting in this space and actually having recruited in other areas prior to this, is that the type of the culture and kind of fit is different to other areas of the business, and actually is quite consistent across the industry in terms of that. Repeating myself from earlier a bit, but the willingness to constantly learn, the kind of strong opinions, loosely held phrase that I like a lot, and I think is very relevant on the whole for this area. You've got to kind of have the strength of your convictions, be willing to try stuff, but also be willing to fail very quickly and learn very quickly. And kind of that agile approach is probably more relevant in e-commerce than some other areas. So being happy to be wrong, and learn from that and develop and kind of have that humility almost within your as a kind of character trait, I think is pretty important. I think we would do a lot of e-commerce recruitment that it's e-commerce roles, and technically they sit within a sales function, but actually they're not sales jobs in the typical sense of that word, and they don't attract salesy people. Right. So I think that's another good thing to be aware of. Is it's more, it's increasingly whatever job you do in e-commerce is driven by data and is analytical. You've got to be a logical thinker, and you've got to be, as I said, willing to change your mind based on what the data tells you, not kind of the very strong-willed, pig-headed kind of commercial person that tends to not really fit.
Yeah, agreed completely. For the job search process, I think it's very similar to what we spoke about last week for experienced e-commerce professionals. Really, you have three avenues, the way that I see it. You apply to jobs. It still works. People get hired from applying to jobs. I don't discourage that. Two, reach out to recruiters like Andy and I. We may have leads for you. We may have some areas that we can point you. Number three is network on LinkedIn. Reach out to individuals that are in a job that seems like something that you might want to do in your career. See if you just have a conversation with them. How did they get there? I think that's super valuable for you to know. And you can ask, do you have any openings in your company? And if you come across, again, as somebody that is very interested, that is very willing to learn, these folks are going to want to help you out.
Yeah. And some simple steps I would say to figure out who are the people I should be approaching, who are the companies, who are the contacts, like going on LinkedIn and actually just kind of immersing yourself in it. We'll start to figure that out, but also like just kind of almost reverse engineer it. What are the things that are selling most online now? What are the categories that are experiencing the biggest growth that you might, just from personal experience, or, you do a bit of research, you see something like CBD oil in the UK, certainly, well, same in the US, I guess. I think you're a bit further ahead, but that's an area that's exploding. So go and find out those kinds of companies. And, if I think on the one end, if you can get into a grad scheme at Amazon or Ocado in the UK, like amazing. I would definitely encourage you to do it.
Yeah.
Amazon is fast becoming like almost the university for e-commerce professionals in the UK, because they just kind of end up going to, into all parts and all areas. So,
and all of our clients love people that have experience directly working at Amazon. Just love it.
Yeah. But if you can't, then thinking about that approach of, who are the businesses who and kind of sectors that I know are going to be really blowing up at the minute.
Yeah.
And often the smaller, more agile companies are the ones who are going to, look more at your entrepreneurism, the fact that you might have set up your own web shop or done all these courses, or just the fact that you've reached out to them and said, hey, like, I know this category is booming at the minute. It's something I'm really interested in. Like, if there's anything you've got, or anything you're thinking of, I'd be keen to work for you. I think the next thing I would say there is, I definitely am not an advocate of companies, taking advantage of people and graduates and unpaid internships and that sort of stuff. But also on the flip side, I'm definitely not averse to people saying, I'll come and work for you for free, or I'll come and work for you at minimum wage, or I'll come and do whatever it is you want me to do in order to get the experience that I need. You know, unfortunately, it'd be lovely if nobody ever had to do that, but people who do that, you know, will often get ahead. So
yeah, even part-time, you don't need to work for free full-time. Get any sort of part-time experience, offer to work a couple hours a week for free on an e-commerce project. I think companies would love that. And that's something you can put on your resume. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
Good. Andy, you mentioned smaller companies, smaller agile companies. And I think that, yes, getting experience with a huge player like Amazon is fantastic, but we work with a lot of clients that have under 50 employees. And these are amazing companies to work for. The cultures are fantastic. The CEOs are great. They've been around a while. They have traction. So what I'm saying is, don't limit yourself to the larger, well-known brands or company names. Some of these smaller companies are quietly killing it, doing extremely well, and you have an amazing opportunity to come in and learn and take on a lot of different responsibilities, wear many hats. This is something that you should consider just starting out, and not pass up on opportunities just because you haven't heard of the company, or you're aiming for something a bit higher. I think that there is a lot of opportunity at these smaller companies that would be really beneficial to you in your career that you can then take to other organizations.
And actually, what I would add to that is, I think even if you don't end up getting a job with one of those companies, if you apply for roles with slightly less well-known, more obscure businesses, and you have good reasons for applying for those roles, or at least getting in touch with them, but then you go and interview for Amazon, and they say to you, right, like, what else are you doing in your job search to find an e-commerce role? If you just say, I've applied to Amazon, I've applied to Ocado, I've applied to the Unilever e-commerce graduate scheme, that's it, then you're not showing a lot of actual genuine interest. If you go, actually, you know, I love this kind of obscure D2C business that are doing amazing things and really disrupting the industry that they operate in, and actually I've applied to them, they've got nothing, but you know, you're able to name a few and show interest, even that might land you a job at a company that isn't like that, but will
good
pay
advice.
off.
Yeah, excellent, very good. One other thing I find is that new graduates are very open to location. All right, they may be open to different cities, they might be open to different coasts here in the US. I'm not sure if that's similar in the UK, because I think the roles are a bit more concentrated, right? But here, there's a big willingness to relocate for the right first position, which I think is fantastic. I think it's a great idea. You should be open to that if at all possible. But the one thing I would suggest for this is, on your resume, if your current location is, let's say, New York, but you're open to roles in LA, you can relocate, you can do so quickly. What I would do is, if you're applying for that role in LA, put right on your resume that you're looking to relocate specifically to LA, because you're competing against candidates that are already in LA. You don't want the person looking at your resume to think, oh, this person's good, but are they really going to want to relocate to LA? Are they really going to want to do that? You don't want to give them any doubt in their mind that this is something specifically that you want to do, you can do, and you can do it quickly. So if you can put that on your resume for each location, just tailor it to each position that you're applying for, each location where it's based. I think that will give you a leg up.
Yeah, it's a great shout. I mean, in the UK, it's slightly less relevant in terms of people moving around, but that point still sticks for me. Is if it's open to relocating anywhere, great, but then once you apply for something specific, change it. I think in the UK, a good chunk of people would kind of finish uni and go, right, if I want to work in e-commerce, I need to work in London, pretty much. People from Manchester will probably hear that and go, actually, you're wrong, because there are increasing number of cool businesses in that space there. But on the whole, it still is.
Good. All right, time for some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Right. So I'm going to start with actually
This is get to know your favorite e-commerce recruiter section of the video series now, just for those who haven't seen it before.
Yeah. You decide at the end who's your favorite based on the
and we don't
answers
know
to these
these.
questions.
We don't know questions that we're going to be asked, so that makes it very exciting and dangerous for us as well.
Dangerous. I didn't know it was quite that extreme.
It's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. What's the worst interview question you've ever had a candidate been asked?
That's a good question. The worst interview question. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit broadly on this. I feel personally very strongly that the worst interview questions are ones that are not relevant to the job itself. I do not care what superhero you would be if you could be a superhero. These are ridiculous questions to ask. I do not care, what you do on the weekend with your significant other. I don't care. And I personally been asked this during interviews myself. And it is completely disheartening. Why do you want to know what I do on the weekends, who I do it with? This is not relevant. I get that culture is important, like we talked about, and you want to be able to just have a normal conversation, but interviews are not the place to do that. If you want to have a normal conversation with somebody, take them out to lunch. That's different than an interview. So I despise interview questions, again, that are not relevant to the position, have no impact on whether or not you could do the job. I feel very strongly about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, and I'm going to answer it anyway. I know you've not asked me, but I would separate the two slightly, because I think there is a time and a place for getting to know someone who you might be employing. And, I would be hypocritical if I didn't say that I have not asked people stuff about what they're interested in as part of an interview, towards the end, to know a bit more about them. But yeah, the questions about completely kind of irrelevant nonsense, I really am not a fan of. What made me think of it, or what I always think of when I'm asked that, or it comes up, is we had a client once used to ask people if you've ever seen a ghost.
What was his purpose of that?
To be honest, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think seeing how people react to a strange question on the spot, or they probably justified it like that. But
I hate that too, by the way. I hate
abusing a position of power, I think, if you ask people questions like that.
I have actually had hiring managers that purposely put candidates through the ringer just to see how they would react. Like, they are not nice during the interview. They'll ask rapid fire questions like this, but not fun ones. and it's just to throw the candidate off. And I hate that, because you are looking like a jerk. You're looking like somebody that this person is not going to want to work for. And you cannot forget that interviewing is a two-way street. The candidate is evaluating you as a potential employer and boss just as much as you're evaluating them. Big pet peeve of mine. Okay, Andy, got one.
Cool. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I got one for you. So everybody's working remotely from home still, right? Big question on everybody's mind, Andy. Are you wearing pants?
Well, in the UK, that means a different thing to what it does for you.
Does it?
Yeah. So
it's a running joke here in the US.
I'm wearing. Sorry, go on.
It's a running joke here in the US because everybody's working from home. Are you wearing pants on your Zoom calls?
Yeah, so pants for you would be trousers for us, right?
That's right.
Pants for us would be boxer shorts. So
that is a funny cultural difference here and across the pond. You guys are hearing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, trousers.
Yeah, well, no, I'm wearing shorts at the minute. The weather's been ridiculous here the past few weeks.
Yep.
So t-shirt and shorts.
How do you like working from home versus working in an office? What are your thoughts on that?
I've always worked from home a bit, so I'm kind of generally used to it. Although actually, I always used to do it from various spots around the house, and I've bought a desk since lockdown because it was getting a bit ridiculous, kind of trying to go wherever my daughter wasn't. Not because I don't like her, but she's quite bad. So yeah, to be honest, I enjoy it quite a lot. My commute it takes me an hour to get to work. So like that.
That's a big time saving.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous, really, because I live in London, I work in London, but that's just how long it takes me to get across town.
Yeah.
So like getting up and knowing you've got a bit of time in the morning without just having to get up and go pretty much straight out the door, I really like. And I never get to see my daughter in the evening when I'm working, and I get to see her every day at the minute. So that's certainly a massive plus point. And I do think, as much as I worked from home in the past, I will work from home more now. Having done this, I've always been a bit kind of reluctant because I manage people that it's been more like I need to be there for them. But as much as we will definitely enjoy being back in the office together, and everyone kind of is pretty keen for it. I also think I'll work remotely more. And you are remote all the time, right?
Yeah, I've been working remote for almost 10 years. I love it. I honestly would not go back to an office environment. I think it's great when you're just starting out and you're learning and you're working with your peers. I think it's fantastic. But you get to a point where you don't need to do that. And technology has caught up with this fact. And I think it's a lot easier now. And one of the biggest benefits is being able to focus. Extreme focus is really important in a lot of positions. And how can you do that when people are coming to your desk all day and bothering you? And I don't know about the UK, I'd imagine it's similar here in the US, that the open office environment just really took off, especially in e-commerce, in more technology driven organizations and functions and startups and that sort of thing. It just got extremely popular. And I, for one, hate the open office concept. It is difficult to get things done. If you want to do open office, or have an open environment, having a really nice open meeting room or several meeting rooms, I think that's the way to do it, where people can come in, and if they want to be around people, yes. But in an open office, most of the time you don't have the choice of going somewhere where you can be alone and really focus. And even if you do, they usually give you a tiny cramped space, and you're like, oh, this is even worse. So I think that's driven a lot of people toward really accepting a remote environment and saying, you know what, the alternative is better. And I agree with that. I think it is.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm not going to ask you if you're wearing pants. I'll leave that one to the imagination.
Oh, right now, pants and trousers, actually. So.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. What's your least favorite food?
Least favorite food. Okay, so here's the thing. I am vegan, actually. I've been vegan for about 7 years. And it is sacrilegious to say in the vegan community that you do not like certain things. And one of those things is jackfruit. I hate jackfruit. It's disgusting. I don't like it with anything. I don't like it dressed up anyway. I just cannot get into jackfruit, but most vegans love it. I just can't do it. So I would say maybe something like that.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Cool. Oh, I don't know. I should have thought about that before I asked you, shouldn't I? I am very unfussy. So there's really not much that I don't. Maybe actually, I'm not particularly keen. It's very niche. I'm not particularly keen on cold egg.
Cold egg, okay.
So like an egg sandwich or something like that.
I could see
that. That's the one thing I could think that I would,
It's very different from warm egg, so I can see that.
Yeah.
And the texture is kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know why that was the first thing that came to mind. There we go.
Very good, very good. All right, well, Andy, amazing chatting with you here. I think that if you're a new graduate, we dropped some information here that I think would be extremely useful for you. So hopefully that's the case. And if you've had success with what we're talking about here, let us know. If you have any additional questions as a new graduate, as you're going through all this for the first time, reach out to Andy and I. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But you're barking up the right tree. You're in the right place. E-commerce is an amazing field. I cannot recommend it more highly. And I look forward to your future.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And I just, yeah, we'll try and put some of the links to some of the different resources we mentioned with whatever we post or underneath the video. But it's similarly, if there's stuff that, yeah, we've mentioned that you can't see that we've put in those resources, give us a shout, ask us if there's anything else that you want to talk about. As always, get in touch.
Yeah, sounds great. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Bye.
Bye.